Hey, New Testament readers, welcome to week 23. In this week, we are almost going to get to the end of John's Gospel. There'll just be a little bit more of the passion and resurrection narratives to deal with. Now, we're going to be smack in the middle of what we call Jesus' farewell discourse in the Gospel of John. This is chapters 14 to 16. We had chapter 14 last week. This week will be in chapter 15, 16 following, okay? So let me just kind of summarize because the farewell discourses of Jesus are really kind of in a sort of a spiral pattern. They go back and forth among several themes. The big idea of this section is that Jesus is explaining to his disciples that his departure, by which he means his death, resurrection, ascension, his departure is God's victory. Even though this isn't the way that the disciples at the time, and in many cases even later, are thinking that the victory of God comes. It doesn't feel like victory sometimes, right? So he's saying, in leaving, I am going to the Father, and this is a sign of my victory, of my overcoming the world. I'm going to the place of authority. I'm going to the one who blesses all of his people and takes care of all of his people. I'm going to be with God the Father. In doing that, I am defeating Satan. Now, this is going to look like Satan wins. At least it's going to look that way for a while. But in fact, this means Satan's defeat. It also means that I can do something for you, which has always been God's intention, and that is that I should give God's Spirit, the Holy Spirit, to you. If I go away, I will send to you another helper. And he is going to enable you to continue the work that I have begun. So I am inaugurating God's kingdom, and you're going to carry that out through the power of the Holy Spirit. And so you will be able to overcome the world. That is, the power that God demonstrates in you is going to be greater than the world's kind of power that's going to be demonstrated as they crucify me and as they do other kinds of things. So in chapter 17, then, Jesus famously prays for his disciples, and this is in the proximity of the temple, so it's often called Jesus' high priestly prayer. And the theme here is glorification. Now, what do we mean by glorification? In the Bible, glorification is showing what something really genuinely is. And in God's case, this means that God is going to prove to be praiseworthy. Well, think then of Jesus' impending death, resurrection, and ascension as the revelation of who he really is. That in this we see, he is the God who gives himself for the sake of people who don't deserve it. He is the God who brings life to death. He is the God who reigns and will return, who is overcoming the world. And so in that, he prays that his followers can be glorified, in particular, that they can be one. And why is that a revelation of who they are? Well, they all belong to him. This is more important than anything else that could be said about them. And so that needs to be revealed not only as an unseen fact, but as a seen fact as they live together in harmony and in love. Jesus then goes to the Garden of Gethsemane, just as he does in the Synoptic Gospels. And the emphasis of the shortened narrative of Jesus in the garden is on the way Jesus willingly surrenders himself. He's going to give a demonstration of his power over those who come to arrest him. And then he's going to let them take him and say, but you let the others go, showing that he has not only power over them, but that he's going to his death for the sake of the freedom of his followers. Now, from there, we'll go into Jesus' trials. We'll see Jesus, first of all, before Annas, who is someone that John will call the high priest. In fact, Annas was the father-in-law of the current high priest, but the four high priests after Annas, all of them appointed by the Romans, who just rotated in people that they wanted in the job. All four high priests after Annas were either his sons or sons-in-law. And we can imagine how that happens. We know how these kind of things work in power positions. And so he was still commonly referred to as the high priest. Now, this trial that he's having is really kind of an interrogation before the more legal but still illegal trial that is held will begin. And the emphasis that John has in telling this story is, first of all, as we have in the Synoptics, to contrast Jesus' faithfulness with Peter's unfaithfulness as he denies Jesus, but also to put emphasis on the public truth of what Jesus has done, that he has acted in public and doing everything in public, and to show the high priest as a hypocrite, having Jesus struck, even though he's supposed to be an exemplar of God's faithfulness. Then we'll have Jesus' trial before Pilate. Again, there's an emphasis on Jesus' greater authority, which is not going to be exercised as we usually think of authority, and of the truth of what Jesus says, whereas Pilate will cynically say, well, what is truth? He's just acting from a power politics perspective. Very important, Pilate will affirm Jesus' innocence. This is something the gospel writers want us to know, that Jesus is innocent. And again, we see Barabbas as one who is released though guilty, a kind of a sign or example of what Jesus' death means. And so as John will present the death of Jesus, we'll see Jesus as Israel's true king, very strong emphasis, and as the true Passover sacrifice. Okay, lots of stuff going on here, so happy reading.